Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining today here in the room and online. My name is Rachel Rose Jack. Oh. Good morning, everyone. My name is Rachel Rose Jackson from Corporate Accountability. Thank you for being here today and from joining online. I'm here today with rights-based constituencies and civil society, and we are here to condemn the failure of the organizers of the UN climate talks to protect against the vested interests here and to deliver a united message that there is no more time for broken promises and we must take the next steps to protect these talks now. I'm joined by Babitha P.S. from the Women and Gender Constituency, Pim Sullivan-Taylor from Youngo Youth Constituency, Bert Devel from Tango Constituency, Rachita Gupta from Demand Climate Justice Constituency, and Erica Lennon from Climate Action Network. I'm going to hand it over to our first speaker today to provide some context for why we're here and why we're here to condemn the failure of these talks to protect against polluting interests. Rachita.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Rachita from the Global Campaign to Demand Climate Justice. I very loudly and very clearly disclose that I have no direct ties to the fossil fuel industry or other polluting industries or with any Zionist entities and no conflict of interest. Together, we are here to condemn the complete and utter failure of the organizers of these UN climate talks to protect against vested interests and deliver a united message. No more broken promises. Take the next step to protect these talks now. For 30 years, the UNFCCC has failed to catalyze meaningful climate action. Every single year, inside these halls, it may seem though it is just another year of business as usual, as if there's no urgency, as if there's nothing that is required of us except talk shops and trade shows. But outside these halls, this could not be further from the truth. At home, our communities are enduring incalculable loss and damage from the compounded impacts of the climate crisis. At home, GHG emissions are reaching record highs year after year after year, and temperatures are set to far surpass what was promised in the Paris Agreement. At home, entire peoples endure genocide directly enabled by fossil fuels, industries, and big polluters. At home, for many, the climate crisis is a fight for life and death. For 30 years, the UNFCCC has failed to deliver on its mandate, which is really very straightforward, to address climate change. The failure is the reason we are now facing full climate breakdown. And this breakdown is caused in large part by the complete failure by the UNFCCC to protect these very talks from polluter interests that seek to undermine them. Now, everything within these halls is in questions, and we need proof that this process has any shred of integrity or legitimacy intact. Actions, not words, and the integrity of those who are meant otherwise protect this process, yet are failing, is wobbly at best. For 30 years, polluter interests have roamed these halls and eroded climate action in every room. They ask us how we know this is to be true. We ask you, should it ever have taken more than 30 years to agree a plan for addressing climate change? Has there been any decrease in GHG emissions since industrial times? Are we curbing fossil fuels and justly transitioning off of them, or transforming agricultural systems to be in harmony with land and peoples? These polluters are legally and financially beholden to advance a profit-first, planet-second agenda. Their interests are in direct contravention to the mandate of the UNFCCC. Yet they are greeted here with open arms, as are their false solutions, their greed, and their deadly agenda. If the UNFCCC wants to be seen as a legitimate process going forward, steps must be taken now towards recognizing and addressing these polluting interests. These steps are long overdue and should have been in place since day one. This is why we are united in our demands to create policies to address conflict of interest and advance an accountability framework that ensures this process is protected against undue interest rather than run by these interests. To this day, UNFCCC does not have an agreed definition of a conflict of interest, let alone any plan for how to address one. This breach of good governance makes the UNFCCC the exception, not the norm, as even other UN institutions have policies to recognize, disclose, and protect against conflict of interest. Not to mention hundreds of other policy-making institutions around the world. Why do we not hold the UNFCCC to the same standards? Are our futures and the lives of millions not worth these protections? 2 years ago, after years of sustained campaigning by our constituencies, by our communities, we secured the first very tiny baby step towards accountability when the UNFCCC Executive Secretary finally agreed to requiring all participants in the UNFCCC to publicly disclose their affiliations before being allowed to engage in the process. This was a long overdue step after decades of nothing but complicity. At this time, it was made very clear to us that this was only the first step of many to come, a foundation that needs to be built upon. Yet for 2 years, we have heard nothing but silence, absolute silence, from the Executive Secretary, whom we look to ensure the UNFCCC process is set up to succeed and not fail. Here in Bonn, we are asking the Executive Secretary to deliver the next steps. And we are here to deliver the message that the world looks to him now to do so. Earlier this week, in less than 24 hours, the Executive Secretary received more than 2,500 emails from many here and around the world reiterating this very need, this very demand. We are extremely disappointed that so far we have seen no action. In a time such as this, silence is complicity. We ask him now to stand for climate action and to demonstrate his commitment to protect these talks. There is no planet B. There is no more time. The only time is now. The only place is here. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachita. I'm now going to hand over to my colleague from the Women and Gender Constituency, Babita P.S.
Hi, my name is Babita P.S., and I voluntarily disclose that I have no direct ties to the fossil fuel industry or other emission-intensive industries, and no conflict of interest. I invite all others taking part in these talks to do the same. For every one person from our constituency comprising individuals from feminist movements, women organizations, LGBTQIA+ organizations, grassroots organizers and researchers, there are 10 fossil fuel lobbies present. When we demand that big polluters are out of negotiation rooms, we also push for the decriminalization of women, human rights, and environmental defenders who have organized to oppose polluters' agenda and receive physical, verbal, and psychological aggression from public forces, mining groups. While the big polluters try hard to keep us out of this negotiation room in here, out there they are funding genocides and state-backed aggression against us. I would like to iterate that yet to this day, the UNFCCC does not even have an agreed definition of conflict of interest, let alone a plan on how to address one. This breach of good governance makes the UNFCCC the exception, not the harm, as even other UN institutes and have policies to recognize, protect against conflict of interest. While we have been monitored, censored, and restricted, polluters do not even have to reveal their sponsors, their providers, or their true interest in this negotiation. They get the easy ticket in. Yesterday, many feminists, including myself, sent an email to the Executive Secretary asking for his leadership and support to bring in accountability. Today, I am requesting the same publicly. When our lives are at stake, we deserve to know, at least know, who is writing the rules of climate action and what interests they represent. For over 30 years, the UNFCCC has maintained the facade of the progress while inviting fossil fuel lobbies into its core. Despite decades of mounting scientific, indigenous, and frontline testimony, it still refuses to adopt a meaningful conflict of interest framework. This is not neglect. This is not neglect, it's institutionalized self-sabotage, a process that claims to address climate collapse by legitimizing the presence of its perpetrators. It's not neutral, it is complicit. It is complicit. Without structural accountability, the UNFCCC reproduces patriarchal colonial system of violence under the guise of negotiation. We demand a UNFCCC that serves the people, not the polluters. No more choreography of compromise while the planet burns. We are told that our demands to reveal conflict of interest are too controversial to be implemented. What message are the organizers of these conferences trying to convey to us when we are trying to ask a fundamental question which will make the process more transparent? As we, as feminists, condemn the failure of organizers of UN climate talks and the Executive Secretary to protect against the vested interest and deliver a united message. No more broken promises. Take the next step to enable climate justice instead of enabling ruthless polluters. As custodian, it is your responsibility to protect the Convention, the Paris Agreement, and the process from those who are culpable of causing this harm. So I would like to say loud and clear that there is no climate justice with polluters in. There is no climate justice without human rights. Thank you.
Thank you, Babita. I'd now like to hand over to my colleague from Tongo Trade Union NGO's constituency, Bert de Wel.
Thank you, Rachel. My name is Bert de Wel. I represent the trade union constituency Tongo. I'm the global policy coordinator at ITUC, the International Trade Union Confederation. I declare voluntarily that I have no direct ties to the fossil fuel industry and no conflict of interest, and I invite all parties to do so. From the workers' perspective, it's clear that this process is not delivering. And we all know why. We know that conflicts of interest are one of the reasons why we are not delivering on the promises of the Paris Agreement and to deal with the impact on all our people. Every day we hear that climate justice, a fair solution, is part of the process, is crucial to have better negotiations, that jobs are being created in the transition, but at the same time, we are often asked, how do you get to justice? How do you get to social justice? How do you get to fairness? From the trade unions, it's very clear. A just solution is a solution that's being negotiated with the people that are affected in a fair and balanced way. And if you then have to participate in a process that's being flooded by lobbyists from the fossil fuel industry, then you're not in a fair negotiation. So that's why we ask for accountability and we ask for transparency to know who is in the room and with whom we are negotiating. Because only in that way can we have equal negotiations that can lead to solutions that are acceptable for everybody. We see that billionaires are taking over our democracy. We see that rights are being eroded everywhere in the world. The ITUC has a global rights index that speaks about the right to strike, the right to organize. And here in this process, the doors are being set open for actually these actors that are contributing to the erosion of our democracies, the erosion of rights in our society. That's why, as trade unions, we join this campaign and we call for accountability and we call for equal representation in the negotiations representing all the people. And we call explicitly to the Executive Secretary, to Simon Steele, stop hiding behind the parties. You have many possibilities. You apply them every day to us. the number of people that can be in a room, the number of people that get a badge. So you have the power to regulate us. You already do regulating us. So impose these rules, impose your power also on the other delegates here. Thank you.
Thank you, Bert. I'm going to hand over to Erica Lennon, representing Climate Action Network. Erica.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Erica Lennon from the Center for International Environmental Law. I'm speaking on behalf of Climate Action Network, and I voluntarily disclose that I have no direct ties to the fossil fuel industry or other emissions-intensive industries and no conflicts of interest. And I invite all others taking part in these talks to do the same. For over 30 years, states have been negotiating and discussing how to curtail climate change. 33 years ago, they signed the UNFCCC with the objective of preventing dangerous anthropogenic interference in the climate. And it's been nearly 10 years since parties signed the Paris Agreement, committing to work to keep temperature rise to below 1.5 degrees Celsius. And for even longer, since at least the 1950s, the fossil fuel industry has known the potential for its product to negatively impact Earth's atmosphere. And the fossil fuel lobbyists have been here the whole time. From the beginning of the UNFCCC, there's even a play happening in London that demonstrates and shows the role of fossil fuel lobbyists in the development of the Kyoto Protocol. It's well known and it's well documented. Every year, fossil fuel lobbyists, carbon capture and storage lobbyists, carbon market proponents come and roam the halls of COP and the subsidiary body meetings. It's no wonder then that when fossil fuel lobbyists are so prevalent in the climate negotiations, that we continue to fail to take the action needed to address the climate crisis, primarily stopping the expansion and production of oil, gas, and coal, and phasing out all fossil fuels, full stop, with no loopholes. Those from the fossil fuel industry stand to benefit from blocking progress here. It is long past time for a conflict of interest policy. You wouldn't want tobacco companies to write the rules on public health, or the gun manufacturers to write rules about school safety or gun control, or chemical manufacturers writing the rules in the Basel, Rotterdam, and Stockholm Conventions to regulate those chemicals. The very industry that is responsible for the climate crisis cannot be the ones writing the rules or unduly influencing the rules that are designed to curtail to stop it. The science is clear. Addressing the climate crisis requires the phase out of fossil fuels and requires that phase out now. The world cannot afford any new expansion of coal, oil, and gas. We are reaching tipping points, and tipping points that will lead to catastrophic impacts that cannot be reversed for both people and the planet. We need a fast, full, fair, funded, and feminist phase out. Fossil fuel lobbyists and carbon capture and storage lobbyists whose interests and profits derive from the very product that is causing climate change cannot and do not have the interests that are in line with the objectives of the Convention and Paris Agreement. For 2 years, the Executive Secretary has been making promises that he will address conflict of interest. He took one teeny tiny step, requiring all participants in the UNFCCC to publicly disclose their affiliations before being allowed to engage in the process. And this is important because transparency is core to accountability, but it's not nearly enough. And this was supposed to be the first step, not the end. Yet since then, nothing. We've heard nothing. We don't even have an agreed definition of conflict of interest, nor have steps been made to put in place an accountability framework to protect this process against the undue influence of people whose interests are tied to climate destruction. The Executive Secretary must take steps to act. It does not appear that there are any legal impediments to doing so, and no reason not to. And we have heard that making the COP more effective is key for the upcoming presidency, and enacting real policies on conflict of interest are a key part to strengthening and reforming the UNFCCC. So the presidency and all parties should also be behind this and should ensure that they are addressing conflicts of interest, and they should do so in their own delegations, and the Brazilian presidency can take steps to demonstrate leadership on this. It's time to right the ship. It's time for the UNFCCC to work for people and the planet and not fossil fuel interest. The world is on fire. The planet and all those living on it have no time to wait. We need to center rights holders and ensure their right to participate, which is fundamental, is being upheld in these talks. And it's long, long past time to kick big polluters out. Thank you.
Thank you, Erica. I'll now hand over to our last speaker today, Pim Sullivan-Taylor from Youngo Youth Constituency.
My name is Pim Sullivan-Taylor from the UK Youth Climate Coalition within Youngo, and I voluntarily disclose that I have no direct ties to the fossil fuel industry or other emissions-intensive industries, and no conflicts of interest, while I also invite others taking part in these talks to do the same. I am now 21, and for my whole life, there have been fossil fuel lobbyists in this space. For a matter of fact, they've been rigging this space since COP3 at least, delaying the rate of meaningful climate action that we need, because they know it is a direct threat to their profits. For 30 years, fossil fuel lobbyists with the likes of Shell, ExxonMobil, and Chevron have been using the UNFCCC as a game, where they discard and influence the rules set in place, leaving an unfair chance for everyone to win. As a young person in the UNFCCC space, our hope in it is wavering, with every issue of conflicts of interest jeopardizing the integrity of this process. At COP last year, we saw nearly double the amount of fossil fuel delegates as there were youth delegates. This cannot be normalized. Youth represents approximately 1.2 billion people and accounts for about 16% of the global population. Yet the fossil fuel lobby represents the interests of a very select few, unmoved by using our lives as pawns in their game. The interests of the UNFCCC lies in how their interests in the UNFCCC lies in whether they can or cannot make profits. And this is in direct contravention to the kind of ambitious climate action that we're trying to do here. The fossil fuel lobbyists that enter this space, the more fossil fuel lobbyists that enter this space, the more it squeezes the narrative and influence on climate action by observers. They enter the space to try and gain social license to operate, but there is nothing normal about continuing to exploit the planet while claiming for a just transition. For this process to truly address climate action for the people most affected by the climate crisis, urgent steps are needed to be taken forward to recognize and address these polluting interests. Yet there is not even a single text or words about what conflicts of interest is in the UNFCCC. For 2 years now, we've had a united demand to address conflicts of interest and made very clear suggestions on how to build an accountability framework. But this framework isn't new. We've seen it in other multilateral processes, such as the World Health Organization's Convention on Tobacco Lobby, which is very similarly another polluting industry. We have built very clear foundations and given very clear tools for the Secretariat to build upon, yet this has been met with incremental steps. That's why the Secretariat has received over 2,500 emails in the last 36 hours, because the safety of our communities is currently and imminently being at risk each time a fossil fuel lobbyist enters the space. There is simply no time. The Executive Secretariat is not doing enough with the influence that he has. It's not about profits, it's about lives, and our lives are not pawns in the fossil fuel lobbyists' games. An accountability framework is possible, but it requires the Executive Secretariat to move in the pace in accordance with the urgency of the climate crisis.
Thank you, Pim. I'd now like to open it up to the floor to see if anybody has questions for any of our speakers. If you do, just raise your hand and we'll send a microphone over. just here, please. Please identify yourself and if there's a specific speaker you'd like to direct your question to as well. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. My name is David Munene. I work with the Catholic Youth Network for Environmental Sustainability in Africa and also help to chair the board of the Southern African Faith Communities Environment Institute. I am fully aligned with the very strong calls that all of you have made, and I work very closely at one juncture in the UNEP spaces with my brother Bart de Wel. My question is to the young person, Pim. We have been in these spaces for quite some time. I personally would like to declare that I have no interest or any conflict of relations or interest with the fossil fuel industry. But I am wondering, why would you want to keep doing this when insanity is doing the same thing over and over and getting the same results? But we are doing the same things over and over and getting worse and worse results, aware that we are not wanted in the space. Why would you still have the fervent fire to do this?
Thank you for that question. Undoubtedly, it's hard. I think there are two things that keep us going, is that there is so much solidarity in the space, and there have been so many elders in the space that have been doing this for a lot longer than I have, a lot longer than the rest of my constituency has, and there is so much strength in struggle, and I see that from them, and it only influences me that if they're okay, we can be okay. So that's one of the things that keeps me going, keeps us going as youth. And I would say the other reason is just there is simply no other way. There is simply not. Yes, we have interests for what our future is going to be, but we also have interests for what our communities are going to be. And we're ever more connected to the rest of the world. We're seeing streamlined genocides. We're seeing absolute decimations of communities. And we can't just stand to the side. We're ever more connected to them. So there is really no other choice. And we do it out of strength in resistance and a fierce compassion with the rest of the communities that we see. So, yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Pim. Perfect last words. Is there anyone else who wants to give last remarks?
I would kind of respond to this because it kind of enrages me when somebody comes and asks a young person why they have to keep going. And it's so cruel and violent to ask them so, that they are being snatched out of their future, and then we as elders, as we call it, have been sabotaging things also, and make them stand here demanding for their safety and future, and when we don't have a future that to offer, a safe future to offer them. So it is not on them to answer why they are here. It's on us to answer why we have been doing this. Why have we been complicit about it, and why we are allowing systems. And it's always the system this has to be held accountable for, and not the person who is coming to question it. Thank you so much for that question, though.
With that, I'm afraid we're out of time, but our speakers will be available outside for any more questions. Thank you for joining today alongside our rights-based constituencies, Climate Action Network, Demand Climate Justice, Tongo, Yungo, and Women and Gender Constituency. None of us up here have any direct ties to the fossil fuel industry or conflicts of interest. It's clear many outside in these halls of the UNFCCC do. We'd like to know if the Executive Secretary has any conflicts of interest he'd like to disclose. If he doesn't, then he should take a clear stand with people. He should take a clear action in order to demonstrate his commitment to protect these talks and make sure that they can deliver the action we urgently need to save millions of lives and not pad polluters' profits. Thank you.